Good morning, children. We will study the rise of nationalism in Europe today. This is the first chapter in your history book of class 10th. We live in a world where the existence of nations is taken for granted. We see people as belonging to nations and having a nationality, and we assume that this sense of belonging has existed from time immemorial. We consider countries as the same as nations and use the two terms as synonyms, making little distinction between them. We think of countries as unified entities, each with a demarcated international boundary, a defined territory, a national language, and a central government. Yet, if we were to travel in a time capsule to the mid 18th century and look for nations as we know them today, we would not find them. In this chapter, we will see how the idea of nationalism emerged in Europe, how territories were unified, and national governments formed. It was a process that took many decades, involved many wars and revolutions, many ideological battles, and political conflicts. In 1848, Frédéric Sorel, a French artist, prepared a series of 4 prints visualizing his dream of a world made up of democratic and social republics, as he called them. Let us have a look at this YouTube video, which will give you a better idea of the depiction by Frédéric Sorel.
In this lesson, you will learn in brief about the conditions that led to the rise of nationalism in Europe during the 19th century. Have you seen the Statue of Liberty? It is one of the most enduring symbols of the United States of America. It emerged from the circumstances where the basic rights of people were being denied vehemently. This makes the Statue of Liberty a perfect symbol of freedom. The concepts of liberty, equality, and fraternity were touchstones of the French Revolution. This is a famous piece called Universal Democratic and Social Republic by French artist Frédéric Sorel. He had visualized a utopian world made up of democratic and social republics. Now, a utopian vision is the vision of a perfect society that is so ideal that it is unlikely to actually exist. If you look carefully, Sorel shows people from different countries and all walks of life marching towards the Statue of Liberty, each of them wearing their national costume and carrying revolutionary flags. The countries leading the procession are the United States and Switzerland. They are followed by the French people, carrying the revolutionary tricolor. France has just reached the Statue of Liberty. By this time, the revolution had taken place in France. France is followed by the German people with their flag. Other countries of Europe, such as Sicily, Lombardy, Poland, England, Ireland, Hungary, and Russia are behind Germany. The rubble in the foreground signifies the end of absolutist institutions and monarchy. Absolutism can be defined as a government or a system of rule with a lot of uncontrolled power It also refers to an oppressive monarchical government.
The first clear expression of nationalism came with the French Revolution in 1789. France, as you would remember from your previous year, was a full-fledged territorial state in 1789 under the rule of an absolute monarch. The political and constitutional changes that came in the wake of the French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. The revolution proclaimed that it was the people who would henceforth constitute the nation and shape its destiny. Let us look at this video for better understanding.
The French Revolution, the emergence of the modern state. So, how did this all begin? For hundreds of years prior to the Revolution, French people, like most Europeans, were divided into three social estates: clergy, nobility, and the lowest estate, the commoners, which existed to serve the other estates. Above all was God's gift to mankind, the king. But this hierarchy was being questioned by the Enlightenment, a movement of intellectuals who promoted the use of reason and science. Revolutionary ideas began to spread to the public. So, in the 1780s, when an economically broke and spoiled monarchy tried to increase taxes on the commoners, resentment reached a new level and riots began. On the 14th of July, 1789, revolutionists stormed the Bastille fortress, a symbol of the royal power. This date is marked as the beginning of the end of the old monarchy, which has become France's Independence Day, even though the king was beheaded only in 1793. Shortly after, the French adopted a universal declaration which stated, "Men are born and remain free and equal in rights." This was a radical change, even though it left many people out. But the French Revolution was far from a smooth ride. Actually, it was a bloodbath, which led to external and internal wars. The newly introduced guillotine worked overtime, beheading tens of thousands of French during a period known as the Terror. In 1799, the revolution ended when a military commander by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte seized control of the French legislature, eventually declaring himself emperor. Although the revolution began and ended with a monarchy, it had a crucial impact on Europe and world history, and laid the foundation for a modern state governed by the people. Things you gotta know. Let them eat cake. Queen Marie Antoinette's supposed response upon learning that the poor peasants had no bread. The American Revolution was considered a major source of inspiration to the revolutionists in France. The French tricolor was formed during the Revolution. The ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity associated with it were superimposed many years later.
The Civil Code of 1804, usually known as the Napoleonic Code, did away with all privileges based on birth, established equality before the law, and secured the right to property. This code was exported to the regions under French control. In the Dutch Republic, in Switzerland, in Italy and Germany, Napoleon simplified the administrative divisions, abolished the feudal system, and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. In the towns too, guild restrictions were removed. Transport and communication systems were improved. Peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed a newfound freedom. Businessmen and small-scale producers of goods in particular began to realize that uniform laws, standardized weights and measures, and a common national currency would facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital from one region to another. Ideas of national unity in the early 19th century Europe were closely allied to the ideology of liberalism. The term liberalism derives from the Latin root liber, meaning free. For the new middle classes, liberalism stood for freedom for the individual and equality of all before the law. Politically, it emphasized the concept of government by consent, end of all privileges, a constitution, a representative government through parliament. 19th century liberals also stressed the inviolability of private property. In the economic sphere, liberalism stood for the freedom of markets, the abolition of state-imposed restrictions on the movement of goods and capital. In the social sphere, it stood for equality for men and women and no special privileges to any class. The new commercial classes who argued for the creation of a unified economic territory, allowing the unhindered movement of goods, people and capital, finally saw their wishes fulfilled. In 1834, a customs union or Zollverein was formed at the initiative of Prussia and joined by most of the German states. The union abolished tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to 2. The creation of a network of railways further stimulated mobility, harnessing economic interests to national unification. A wave of economic nationalism strengthened the wider nationalist sentiments growing at that time. Following the defeat of Napoleon in 1815, European governments were driven by a spirit of conservatism. Conservatism is a political philosophy that stressed the importance of tradition, established institutions and customs, and preferred gradual development to quick change. But these people realized that from the changes initiated by Napoleon, the modernization could in fact strengthen traditional institutions like the monarchy. It could make state power more effective and strong. A modern army, an efficient bureaucracy, a dynamic economy, the abolition of feudalism and serfdom could strengthen the autocratic monarchies of Europe. In 1815, the representatives of the European powers, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, who had collectively defeated Napoleon, met at Vienna to draw up a settlement for Europe. The Congress was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. The delegates drew up the Treaty of Vienna of 1815 with the object of undoing most of the changes that had come in Europe during the Napoleonic Wars. The Bourbon dynasty, which had been deposed during the French Revolution, was restored to power. France lost the territories it had annexed under Napoleon. A series of states was set up on the boundaries of France to prevent the French expansion in future. Thus, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which included Belgium, was set up in the north. Genoa was added to Piedmont in the south. Prussia was given important new territories on its western frontiers. Austria was given control of northern Italy. In the east, Russia was given part of Poland, while Prussia was given a portion of Saxony. But the German Confederation of 39 states that had been set up by Napoleon was left untouched. The main intention was to restore the monarchies that had been overthrown by Napoleon and create a new conservative order in Europe. During the years following 1815, the fear of repression drove many liberal nationalists underground. One such individual was the Italian revolutionary Mazzini. Born in Genoa in 1807, he became a member of the secret society of the Carbonari. As a young man of 24, he was sent to exile in 1831 for attempting a revolution in Liguria. He subsequently founded two more underground societies, first Young Italy in Marseille and then Young Europe in Bern, whose members were like-minded young men from Poland, France, Italy, and German states. Mazzini believed that God had intended nations to be the natural units of mankind, so Italy could not continue to be a patchwork of small states and kingdoms. Metternich described him as the most dangerous enemy of our social order.